She considered his response like one considers a meal she did not order at an expensive restaurant. "Then why are you leaving?" Kat asked, her tail coming to rest lightly upon her own shoulder. The question hung between the two creatures. Crow looked at her heavily, warily, and scared. For the first time of her retractable claws and the incisors she hid behind her ever-cryptic smile. "Why are you leaving me?" Crow slowly lifted his glass and took another dip into the brandy. He felt tired. "I'm a crow," was all he could say, and he knew that as he said it, her heart was breaking. They had been together for many years. He needed to fly again. "I'm just a crow." "But I love you." This time, Kat's voice rumbled menacingly. It sounded discordant and eerie over the melody issuing from the gramophone, and the record began skipping bitterly during the bass solo, as if insulted by the interruption. Crow removed his spectacles and buffed them painstakingly on his wing before replacing them back on his beak with a soft click. He stood from his perch in the easy chair. Kat's haunches twitched with uneasiness or anticipation. Walking to the record player, he reset the stylus, and the bass bumbled on once again, unconcerned by the conversation competing for airtime in the hollow of their home. "Winter is coming soon. I'm just a crow. But I will always love you." Kat lifted the queen from the chessboard with a slight tremor of her paw, set it back down, poured herself some more brandy. She considered the move once more. "And I am just a cat, after all," she replied. "Checkmate." In the days that followed, winter came on fast wings. The cold gusts whipped through the casement of the tree, sending black feathers scurrying across the dusty floors and through the knothole. They danced in the breeze like black ghosts, dashing higher and higher towards the eaves of the sky until the wind forgot them and they spilled down to the barley field below. An overturned bottle of brandy rolled lazily back and forth on the disheveled chess table, making an odd sound like the creaking door of a tomb, and there was a broken pair of spectacles tossed in one corner of the room. A murky stain stretched jaggedly across the old floorboards and down the stairs where Kat remained for days, mewing incoherently to herself and shrieking at the darkness enshrouding her. The sky grew black and cold. Kat began hunting again for stray mice and wounded birds lost in the fields. She would drag back their blood-stained, smeared corpses, never speaking a word except at night when she would cry out for Crow and sink her claws into the furniture, ripping and shredding until they resembled skeletons and fiends. The old tree became filled with the ghastly remnants of rotting birds and rodents. Owl would sometimes perch inside the knothole looking for scraps, but left with a gusting thrash when Kat's midnight shrieks echoed up from the base of the stairs. One day, Kat did not return to the tree. She left its confines in search of Crow, a wildness and desperation flashing in her now glazed eyes. Her fur had become matted with blood and struck to her body, brown patches that she neglected to clean, as though gruesomely preserving the memory of her old friend. Crying out in broken meows, she called his name over and over, but was answered only by the muted echo of her own voice. Prairie mice fled from the harrowing feline screams, and the stumbling, crazed shadow of Cat. But the barley stalks merely bowed and whispered amongst themselves, shivering slightly as she lurched among them. Suddenly, a jet-black burst of feathers and talons swooped past Cat's shoulder, alighting in a small dirt clearing before her. He cawed softly, but she couldn't understand what he was saying. "Crow?" she whispered timidly. "Is it you?" The bird cocked his head quizzically, watching Cat. He brushed his beak absent-mindedly. The air smelled vaguely of lavender. The crow looked at the sky and took off once more, but after flying several loops through the chill dusk that had settled over the field, he landed again several yards away and returned his gaze to the stunned figure of Cat. "Crow!" she cried, unable to restrain herself. She bounded towards him with renewed animation, the prowess of her sleek muscles returning with each step she took closer to the dark bird. He appeared before her like an apparition, for as soon as she got close enough to look in his eyes again, he flew farther off once more, each time looking back, willing her to follow. And follow him she did. Though the length of the field and through dark patches of treacherous wood that outlined the safety of the open meadows. Each time she called his name, the bird would look back towards her, through her, as if she was not there at all, but the shadow of something that once was. Cat started to feel her heart pound as an inexplicable sorrow settled deep somewhere inside her. Desperate to catch up, to feel the soft blue-black down of the crow's feathers one more time against her paw, she began sprinting frantically so that the crow was forced to remain in the air just above her head, leading her by flight through the wisps and turns of darkness. "Crow! Crow, please listen. I'm sorry, Crow. I'm so very sorry. So very, very sorry." The words came out as a gasped plea. "I'm forever and ever." The crow had led Cat to a large stone bridge that scaled the width of a river. Cat leapt from the edge after Crow and readied her paws for the ice below, but before she could think, she crumpled beneath the folds of ice that had never bothered to freeze solid. Cat could feel the icy splash crack her ribs right before the river swallowed her. And she floated, trapped between heavy ice and heavy silt, suspended in motion, and she finally understood. As her lungs filled with water, she could make out the dark shadow of the ghost bird disappearing with the starry sky above. She felt, dimly, a heavy peace drag her down into sleep. From then on, her cries were absent from the frigid night, and the tree was shaded with stillness. The gaunt barley stalks shivered and swayed under a silent breeze that breathed across the shadows and over the distant forest, where it skipped across a half-frozen river, whispering through the twilight. A small tuft of pallid orange and ash bobbed near the shore, just visible against the white of ice that encased it. Cat's body rested, mangled in the freezing waters, and was soon consumed by cold and hungry scavengers at dawn. They didn't know her, or care to. They were just scavengers, after all. Spring arrived once again, months later. New tenants eventually inhabited the tree once the stink of death had faded and the sun could slant through the old knothole, spreading the overpowering scent of lavender, illuminating the dark floorboards, and displaying the gloom of fiends. Owls and hawks stalked mice and rabbits. Foxes stalked unsuspecting fowl. Life returned to normal, as it tended to do. Life became death, and that was the way of it. Through the old knothole, at the zenith of night, even now, the sky turns so black that it dabbles to blue, and the starry constellation of a Cheshire cat's grinning face twinkles to the earth below. The dark, barely visible flurry of a faraway crow flutters against its ever-smiling cheek.